Hello everyone, my name is Zhang Jun. I'm a research assistant at the Institute of Public Policy of South China University of Technology. During the following half an hour, I will be joined by my colleague Dr. Guo Hai, assistant research fellow at our institute. We would like to share what we learned from the relevant policy research about the Great Bay Area, the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Great Bay Area. Hope what we demonstrate here can be helpful to your further understanding of one of China's most national development strategies. I'll cover three major aspects. The first one, an overview of the Great Bay Area. Second one, the policy implication. And finally, the difficulties and the challenges. Actually, in the first section, we will move from the general to the specific. We will start with defining what is the Bay and their economies. After that, we will move on to the Great Bay Area and kind of details. Of course, we will try to introduce some details, but we are not going to spend too much time on the details because nowadays it's very easy for you to obtain the relevant information online. We strongly recommend this website, which offers almost all the factual information you need. We will use the time we save in the first section to explore the implicit logic, the challenges, and the countermeasures about the Great Bay Area in the second and the third section, which will offer the information that is different from the sort of news you normally heard about this policy. In the third section, Dr. Guo and I arrange a question and answer section. By doing this, we will cover the most frequently asked questions about this policy. Okay, let's move on to the first section, an overview of the Great Bay Area. To begin with, let's focus on what is Bay Area and why it's important. Bay Area refers to an area comprising a bay or several adjacent bays, harbors, and adjacent islands. And so why it's important? Because the Bay Area normally has the potential to make it easier to develop bay economies. The bay economies normally have a very good potential to boost the local economy, and it's representing the most important coastal economic forms, compressing highlights of the world economic map and representing a significant symbol of the world's advanced coastal cities. Let's look at this map. We have the top three Bay Areas all over the world: the New York Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and the Tokyo Bay Area. Others, like the London Dockland area and the Sydney Bay in Australia, are also very famous. If we look at this table, the New York Bay Area, I'm not going to read the numbers one by one. You can look at it by yourself. I just want to point out some characteristics of these three Bay Areas. The New York Bay Area attracts the talent all over the world with its developed transportation system, good environment, well-developed education facilities, and so on. To perspective, we can say that the New York Bay Area equals to strong financial and manufacturing industries plus good universities such as Harvard University, MIT, Columbia University, and New York University. This area accounts for 10% of the national GDP, 20% of the foreign trade of the US total, and 1/3 of the manufacturing of the US total. After that is the San Francisco Bay Area. San Francisco Bay Area, compared with the New York Bay Area, has relatively small territory and much smaller population size. But the key words and the characteristic of this Bay Area is its technology. As we know that San Francisco Bay Area is one of the most important high technology research and development centers all over the world. Some internet giants like Google, Facebook, Tesla, we can find the headquarters of these companies in this area. And back to Asia, we got the Tokyo Bay Area. Tokyo Bay Area, the territory of Tokyo Bay Area actually only accounts for 3.5% of the total territory of Japan. However, it attracts 1/3 of the country's population, 2/3 of the economic volume, and contribute 2/3 of the economic volume, and it concentrates 1/3 of the industrial cities of Japan. Therefore, the Tokyo Bay Area is the biggest industrial city cluster of this country. And as well as the trade center, the finance center, and the center of consumption. Yeah, let's look at some of the data of the Great Bay Area. Given the size, the population size, the economic growth rate, and the geographical situation, we can assume that China, as a great country, may cultivate one or even more Bay Areas in the future. In the north, we got the Bohai Bay Area. It's around our capital city, Beijing. In the middle, we got the Hangzhou Bay Area. Hangzhou Bay Area has the leading city, Shanghai, which is our economic capital. And we got the Hangzhou and Suzhou two poorer cores of this area. In the south, we got the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Bay Area. Let's invite Dr. Guo Hai. Let's see what Dr. Guo brings to us about the details about the Great Bay Area.
Thank you very much, Zhang Jun, for giving us so much detail on the development of Bay Areas around the world. And in this session, I want to focus down a bit more on the major characteristics of the Greater Bay Areas. So we'll be talking about its unique features, including its economic potential, its unique edge, and historical origin. So first, we need to know that the Greater Bay Area is enormous in size and very diverse in culture. So we know that the Greater Bay Area comprises two special administrative regions, Hong Kong and Macau, and 9 Pearl River Delta cities, including Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Foshan, Huizhou, Dongguan, Zhongshan, Jiangmen, and Zhaoqing. So the land area of the Greater Bay Area amounted to about 56,000 square kilometers, with a total population of more than 70 million people at the end of 2018. And that's a population larger than that of the United Kingdom. So when we talk about the Greater Bay Area, we are talking about an economic entity bigger than most of the European countries. So you can see there's a huge economic potential in this city cluster. So China's national strategy was to bring those cities together under a unified economic strategy.
Second, the strategy of the GBA presents the overall arrangements between the country's leadership and national development. representing the practice of one country, two systems. What is the one country, two system principle? We know that China used to be a feudal society in the 19th century during the Qing dynasty. It clashed with the more industrialized Western powers that rushed to open China's market. Hong Kong was ceded to the British Empire in 1841 after the Opium War, and Macau to Portugal in 1887. They were returned to China and became special administrative regions of China in 1997 and 1999 respectively. After the handover, the two cities retained their autonomy and economic system as well as their independent legal system. This is an arrangement representing the one country, two systems principle. The one country, two system principle has, for the last 3 decades, turned out to be a huge edge for the regional development of Guangdong. Hong Kong and Macau enjoyed access to an enormous market and a very strong manufacturing capacity in the mainland. At the same time, the mainland cities in Guangdong became more conveniently connected to global capital, the international market, the transfer of knowledge, and international talent via the two special administrative regions. But the current problem is that the Pearl Delta River cities are very diverse in size and industrial capacities, that sometimes they compete against each other unnecessarily. A more systemic, coordinated plan is needed to release the full potential of the GBA. We usually emphasize the aspect of two systems, but overlooked the one country principle. China needs to be developed nationally, and it is vital to bring the GBA cities together under a centrally mandated plan.
So we've talked about this, the economic potential and also the unique feature of the GBA. So now let's turn to its historical origin. So Zhang Jun has told us that the concept of Greater Bay Area, or the concept of Bay Area, has been put in practice internationally in the United States and in Japan. So we have the New York Bay in the 1920s, and we also have the Tokyo Bay in the 1960s. So the idea of creating a city cluster is not novel at all. So we are drawing on international experience. In fact, back in 1994, which is before the return of Hong Kong to China, there were Hong Kong experts who proposed to build Shenzhen Bay Area using the San Francisco Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area as an example. And also at the beginning of the 21st century, Guangzhou took the initiative to build Nansha Harbor with reference to the Tokyo Bay Area. And then in 2000s, we witnessed a new development of people who advocated the idea of building a Greater Bay Area. In 2009, so we've seen that in the relevant departments of Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau jointly released a document on the research into coordinated development planning of urban agglomeration in the Greater Pearl River Delta in Macau. So the idea was to propose to construct the Pearl River estuary area and a world-class urban cluster linking Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. And in 2014, there was a working report issued by the Shenzhen municipal government proposing to build the Bay Area economy. And finally, last year, in February 18th, the plan of creating the GBA went official. In March 2016, the State Department issued the report advocating to construct a platform linking Guangdong area, Hong Kong, and Macau. And in 2019, the CPC Central Committee and the State Council set out the outline of development planning for Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau Bay Area. The cooperation objectives, in a nutshell, are to build Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau into a world-class city cluster, each area playing a very unique role and adding to the advantage of the city cluster as a whole. Guangdong area will be the leading center for science and technology and industrial innovation. So Guangdong area will play its role as an industrial powerhouse. Hong Kong will continue to play its role as an international financial center, especially an offshore RMB business hub. Macau will be a world-class leisure and tourism center, and also a platform for Portuguese-speaking countries. So it comes naturally to the question of how to achieve this grand plan set out by the advocates of the GBA. So there are some key measures according to the Central Economic Work Conference in 2018. I'm not going to read them out for you because those information are accessible on the internet. But just to put it in a nutshell, the plan is to promote the flow of capital, good, and people in the region, to bring 3 different tariff and legal systems and 2 different political systems into a unified, centralized economic development plan, and to transform the GBA into an economic engine for China and also for the world economy.
Thank you for bringing us so much details about the GBA. Let's move to the section 2, policy implication. Apart from the factual information, it's also very crucial to look at the implicit policy means behind the policy itself. The first one is making persistent efforts to play the role of the economic engine. Second is actually the objectives of building the GBA is including but not limited to the economic objectives. Okay, let's look at this map. We have, if we exclude Taiwan, Macau, and Hong Kong, we have 31 provincial administrative regions in China. Unfortunately, among them, 25 are financially deficit. Only Guangdong, Fujian, Jiangsu, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Beijing have financial surplus. Meanwhile, Beijing, as the capital city of China, on behalf of the whole country, shouldered so many unique missions. So we want to put it together with other cities to look at position in terms of economic importance. In other words, the 5 provinces, including Guangdong, have to pay for the remaining 25 provinces that has a financial deficit. So think about the pressure. That's why Guangdong have to persistently play the role of one of China's economic engines. Meanwhile, the policy of the GBA aims to promote social integration through economic integration. Hong Kong, Macau residents are facing some very practical difficulties, like their housing, pension, and job opportunity. That's why the central government wants to promote opportunities for the younger generation in Hong Kong and Macau, help them to find jobs in the Great Bay Area. Okay, the first question. Is the economy of the Bay Area a result of natural growth or planning? If it is a result of natural development, or at least it more depends on natural development, can the prosperity of Great Bay Area be planned?
Thank you very much, Zhang Jun. I think this is a very interesting question. I think first we have to understand that there is a commonly held misconceptions about the relationship between market economy and state policy. So market economy and state policy, or governmental regulations, are not mutually exclusive. The government, in many cases and to a great degree, can facilitate the growth of market economy by, for instance, mediating the relationship between different administrative regions, implementing infrastructure plans, creating a favorable legal environment for businesses, and enforcing environmental protection policies, etc. So these things are very crucial to the natural growth of market economy.
Okay, well, the second question, as I mentioned before, there are more than one Bay Area economies has been planned in China. So in terms of building an urban cluster, what is the best way to promote the complementary advantages between the Great Bay Area and other urban clusters planned by the central government in order to avoid duplication or excessive competitions between them?
Thank you very much, Zhang Jun. I think this is a very complicated question, and I'll be citing the words of Zheng Yongnian, Professor Zheng Yongnian, the head of our academic committee at IPP. He previously answered this question, so I think so I'll take the liberty of citing what he says. So first, we have to understand what the GBA really is. It covers 3 different tariff and legal areas under 2 different economic and political systems. So it's working under the principle of one country, 2 systems. But if you look at the other Chinese Bay areas, including the Bohai Bay Area or the Hangzhou Bay Area, they are working under the principle of one country, one system. So areas working under one country, one principle, one system principle tend to be very, their integration tend to be very mechanical and physical. But the Greater Bay Area working under the one country, 2 system principle tend to be more pluralistic, with access to international capital, would have more access to international talents, etc. So that's what makes the GBA special and distinct from the other Bay areas in China. And second, how to avoid duplication or excessive competition between them. The key is to let the market do its job. Overregulation would usually kill the market rather than to enhance it. The government regulation is important. However, overregulation is harmful to a well-functioning or the self-regulation of market. Excessive competition can be circumvented actually in a well-functioning self-regulating market. So we need to we need to allow the market to run by itself. The government need to have a negative list, a not to-do list. Having a to-do list is only secondary to the government's job.
The third question. Well, Dr. Guo Kai just mentioned the cooperation and the competitions between different Bay areas. But in terms of internal cooperation, the Great Bay Area covers 3 tariff areas and 3 jurisdictions and 2 political systems, as he mentioned before. So who will act as an integrator and how should the system be integrated? Meanwhile, from the perspective of competition, how can we avoid unnecessary internal competition and duplicate constructions between so many cities in this area? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zhang Jun. I think this is yet another very complicated question. There seems to be 2 opposing demands, how to facilitate cooperation, and second, how to avoid excessive competition. They seem to be contradictory, but we need to understand that they are performed or they are addressed by different agents. It is the government that maintains cooperation and facilitates cooperations, and it is the market that maintains a fair competition between firms and regions. So the government in the GBA needs to implement social policies or public policies to bring cities together. And I think there are a lot of things we can learn from the European Union. So the EU didn't have a custom union on the first day of its establishment, but still is functioning very well under commonly agreed upon principle and international treaties. So certainly we can draw on the European experience. And second, we need to maintain that it is the market that a self-regulating market that maintains the fair competition between firms. So allocation of resources and division of labor cannot be achieved by state intervention, especially excessive, unnecessary state intervention. So the Guangdong area is very successful in the past 30 or 40 years, but that's not because of state intervention. That's because we let the market to function by itself. So to run or to achieve the cooperation objectives of the GBA, we need to rely on market economy rather than unnecessary state intervention. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guo. The last question. To what extent the external variables, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the Sino-US trade war, and the cancellation of Hong Kong special status, affect the construction of the Great Bay Area?
Thank you very much. I think these are very good questions. I think everyone is talking about these topics: COVID-19 pandemic, the Sino-US trade war, or the establishment of the national security law, etc., and how they would affect regional economy in the GBA. But I think because those are still ongoing events, we'll leave it open to you, and we hope to have another occasion to discuss them in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Guo. And thanks for watching, and looking forward to further communications in the future. Bye-bye.